Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome once again to one of our irregular series of panel webinars that we do from time to time. We're going to get a wee moment while folk get in because it takes a wee while to register. So while we're doing that, I'll just kind of cover some of the housekeeping for the session. All attendees are muted to keep down background noise. But we do please invite you to submit a question in the chat at the side, and we will do our very best to answer as many of those as we can. If we don't get to them, don't worry, we will follow up with answers on those later on. There's the panel, as you can see, we're joined by some colleagues this afternoon, and we'll get to them in a wee moment. We will record the session, and we will make that available as well afterwards. Anything we don't cover, as I say, we will try and get back to you on that. So let's get ourselves rolling here. Small Business Saturday will be with us this Saturday, 7th of December. As always, we are really looking forward to it, and we wanted to celebrate the whole thing. That's the purpose of our panel today, is to kind of celebrate that. But in doing so, we want to explore with the panel some of their experiences, what they've done, some of the challenges perhaps that they've faced in running a small business, as well as perhaps opportunities for growth and learning. So we're going to get a chance to explore their business journey so far and share some advice on how to navigate the SME landscape in Scotland. So to do that, first of all, let's get the panel to introduce themselves. Kate, I'm going to come to you first.
Sure, thanks, Hugh. My name is Kate Smith. I'm CEO of ProfessorMe. We are inventing the world's first digital professor. So we're in the university sector. We're based in Edinburgh, and we've got 11 staff just now. We'll be up to 13 staff in the new year. Nice to meet you all.
Grand, thank you, Kate. That sounds really encouraging. Douglas.
Hi, I'm Douglas Hardie. I'm director of a few food and drink companies, so most well known as the Bad Girl Bakery and the sister company Good Girl Greengrocers. But also I'm the director of the Highland Food and Drink Trail, which is effectively a street food organisation within Inverness and the wider area.
Brilliant, thanks Douglas. Karen, come to you.
Thanks, Hugh. Hi, everyone. My name is Karen Robinson. I am founder of Three Robins, and we are an oat milk company based in Edinburgh. And all of our products are designed with families in mind. So we have a range of oat milks and also a range of little oat milk smoothies for kids. And everything we do is sort of trying to tick that healthy box, but also making sure that the things that kids and adults alike will enjoy.
Brilliant. Thank you all for that introduction. So you'll see that we have quite a broad range of and diverse range of panelists today from different backgrounds doing different kind of things with loads of experience. So let's get into that. And I'm going to start, Karen, with yourself. What would you say has been the most rewarding part of running a small business for you?
Sure. I think obviously we make it's a product business, so without question, the most rewarding thing is walking into a shop or cafe and seeing that they use Three Robins, and that's always just fantastic to see your product on shelf, but also getting feedback from customers. We've grown very organically, word of mouth, and so hearing people who have used our product either recommending it to others or coming to us directly saying, oh, this has changed my breakfast routine. I can now eat things I didn't used to, or I just use your product all the time. So for me, that kind of like end customer validation is huge, because at the end of the day, that's why I'm doing what I'm doing.
Brilliant. Okay. Douglas, what about yourself?
I think with most people with a small business, I think you're spending most of your time with your head down deep in all sorts of everyday stuff. And I think occasionally you get those perfect moments when you have a chance to look up and actually see what you've achieved, and you get that sudden thrill. So, looking at these questions earlier, the first thing that came to mind was the opening day of the Highland Food and Drink Trail, which came out of COVID, and there was 2 years or so of funding applications, checking this, trying to wiggle our way through all sorts of legislation and all sorts of stuff. And then one day launching, and there's sort of people milling around, and you're thinking, oh, you're checking these things, you're checking those things, and then 20 minutes later you look up and suddenly there are literally thousands of people having fun, enjoying themselves. There's the smell of food, and suddenly you have that clarity that actually it worked. The thing you're doing is actually working just now, and it's quite a buzz. And when you get that just once a year, that's all I ask, is just once a year, just getting that sudden moment where you think, I'm doing it, I'm actually doing it.
Brilliant. Certainly from my own personal experience, I used to be within one of the enterprise agencies in the food and drink sector, and it encouraged me to think about, in fact, starting my own food business. Problem being that the things I was thinking about were either beer, ice cream, or chocolate, and I realised that the very great likelihood I was either going to drink or eat the profits. So that was never going to work. Kate, I'm going to come to yourself. What's been the most rewarding part of running a small business for yourself?
I think, well, because we are an edtech business, so we are an AI business, we don't have products in shops. We've got nothing to see because it exists in the cloud. So I think for us, probably manifesting our vision and our mission to improve university education and taking that into the world and making a change, a positive impact in the world, but to people's lives as well, about how learners learn and helping students maximise their potential, really. Also, I must say, meeting the lovely people in the business support ecosystem in Scotland. So it's not just about the destination, it's about the journey as well and the people we've met.
Really good point. Absolutely brilliant point. It is very much about the journey. Yeah, absolutely. And I guess that kind of brings us very neatly on to another question in relation to that journey. Can you share a milestone or achievement that you're particularly proud of in that regard? Douglas, I'm going to put you on the spot on that one. First of all, you've kind of touched on it in some ways, but what else might you want to cover?
Well, I think one of the things that we've noticed over the last few years, when I say we, is generally, if it's Bad Girl, I'm talking about myself and my wife, Jenny Inetta, and if I'm talking about Highland Food and Drink Trail, Leslie Strang's my partner with that one. But coming out of COVID, everything's been a bit difficult and stuff. But one of the things we've started doing again is entering awards. Now, I genuinely don't care whether I win an award or not. But the application forms, when you're forced to sit there, and as I say, that it forces you into that moment when you're looking up away from the mundane day-to-day, the drag, all the problems that you're facing, and actually having to say, this is what we've done. It's a lovely feeling. And on top of that, we were at the Scotland Food and Drink Excellence Awards. These massive things. And I'm sitting at the table, someone, the purchasing director from Aldi or something like that, someone who supplies all the high quality steaks to the supermarket chain, and they've got 1,000 farms and things, and you're sitting there thinking, what am I doing here? This is amazing. And then you get a special commendation because people are going, actually, you've changed the face of food and drink in this area. You've done this, you've promoted this sort of region's food thing. Actually, you deserve a round of applause there. And it sounds so petty and superficial, but actually that moment when you get that validation and that acknowledgement from not just your peers, but the people you think are way above you in the whatever hierarchies you're talking about, it is a lovely moment. And I would suggest to everyone, go for awards. Just go for awards. Customers love them, but actually it gets your head up. It makes you look at where you are and what you've achieved.
I would certainly echo that. We had the opportunity last week to sponsor the Herald Family Business Awards. And family businesses, I was rather shocked to discover 84% of the businesses in Scotland are family businesses. That's 280 odd thousand businesses, employing about 800,000 people, massively important to the Scottish economy. The challenge with the awards is the diversity in that sector. So you have very small businesses competing against very large businesses in the categories. And we had a couple of businesses with us on the table, and one of them particularly absolutely delighted just to be a finalist and get a mention and to see themselves up there, so they loved it. And I had the privilege earlier on this year to present Kate with an award at the Women's Enterprise Scotland Awards.
Was it this one?
So, and that was, you know, the best startup. So Kate, I'm going to come to you next in terms of that question of a milestone or an achievement you're particularly proud of.
Well, I did actually have this ready to present as mine.
Oh, right.
So that was a nice segue, Hugh, and we didn't rehearse that. I think for anybody listening, if you're thinking about starting up or if you're starting up, and just to echo what Douglas said, I think going for awards, because it's a milestone that you can, because you're so busy doing, like, wearing different hats, doing different things, you know, thinking about your resilience, keeping the cash flow running, that you forget to look up and you forget to look at your business. Well, perhaps I'm speaking personally. So I think for us, the milestone was winning Startup of the Year, which meant the world to us because we didn't expect it. And it was just a lovely moment. And it was lovely to meet other founders and to discuss it. And I think that meeting other founders is so useful, you know, going to incubators, going to accelerators, because you meet people that you can discuss things with, because your friends and family get sick of you talking about your business, to be honest. So it's just really nice. You can ask about things. So so that's definitely, if you're thinking about setting up a business, Business Gateway help you, but they also help you scale up as well. So Business Gateway are still helping us scale up, which is incredibly useful. And I think the award was just a nice sort of punctuation point to recognise that. So thank you.
Brilliant. A bit of jam on top of the bread and butter.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Okay, Karen, what about yourself?
So I've got two, if I can. I think one continues with this sort of trend of awards. So we launched in May 2022, and I won Scottish Edge in May 2023. So it was only a year after launching the business. And if you, for those listening, if you don't know what that is, it's an amazing startup competition that's run twice a year in Scotland. They just actually are announcing the finalists of the latest round, I think, tomorrow. So it's an amazing competition to enter. It's very rigorous. And any business, I think you have to be 5 years or younger to enter. They've got different categories. So it was my fourth time applying that I finally won, but winning significant funding, which comes in the form of grant and a loan, but that just allowed me to kind of really accelerate the business. And I was just really proud of myself, because coming to entrepreneurship, food and drink, from a completely different background. I didn't know anything when I started this business. So it was a really steep learning curve. And so to kind of get that validation and that belief that this business was going somewhere was, for me, huge. And it allowed me to then make lots of decisions and invest in the business that allowed us to grow. And then one other achievement lately is, so I came into this business, I've got 3 little boys and 2 of them are lactose intolerant. So it was very much from my own frustration as a consumer. The kind of plant-based products, they were really sugary, there wasn't a great choice. I wanted better, basically, for my kids. And so recently, along with 8 other businesses, we've just founded a new collective called the Kids Food and Drink Collective. And so we're all brands focused on healthier options for kids. And we're going to be working together to kind of lobby and advocate with the food and drink industry to sort of demand better in both retail and food service, because we feel that there's just not enough recognition of healthier options for children. So we're going to be working together. It's really exciting. It only just launched a couple of months ago. So that's just sort of like something else that has come out of my networking and through the business that I'm loving being part of.
Brilliant. I wonder, is there an opportunity, taking a leaf out of Douglas's book, for an Edinburgh child-friendly food trail, perhaps, or something like that?
Yeah, we'll have to.
I'll have a commission on that one. Thank you very much. No, so that's brilliant. That's really helpful to get a kind of understanding on that. I'm going to divert us slightly to the first question that we've actually had in, and it's kind of quite relevant to. Okay, somebody's phone was on there. A question's come in. Someone who really wants to start a business, they've got an idea, but they're too scared to do it. It's that kind of fear bit. Any advice from our panel on that? Douglas, I'm coming to you first again on that one.
I hope my wife's not watching this. I'll keep trying to keep away from it. But my wife is an incredibly anxious person. The expression "what could possibly go wrong" is something she's ready to answer at any point in time. Of course you're scared, but actually, yes, that's from my point of view. I think from looking at Bad Girl Bakery, that fear means you talk to people, you don't take risks, you don't cut corners. That everything you do really, really well, and actually, embrace it. Embrace that fear, because that will stop you taking too many risks. It will stop you making stupid decisions. It'll make sure that you are literally thinking what could possibly go wrong all the time, and you start ticking those things off. So when you do something, the risk isn't there, or the risk is manageable. You know exactly where the risk lies. I think being afraid to start your own business, absolutely great. Live with that. You should be. If you're not, you're about to do something terribly dangerous. But no, I think without Jenny's anxiety, I don't think Bad Girl Bakery would be the business that it is.
Okay, so think twice, act once, kind of an idea.
Something like that.
Something like that. Karen, what's your thoughts on that?
So I got distracted with my phone. So it's on advice for starting a small business.
Yeah, somebody who's basically they've got an idea, they want to do it, but they're scared to do it. So what advice would you give them?
I think look around you and take advantages of every opportunity to kind of network, learn from other people. I mean, I think the one thing I have found in being new to this sort of business community is just how incredibly supportive it is in Scotland. And I speak from a food and drink perspective, but I just now have so many great friends and supporters in the food and drink community that when I have something that I don't know, and it could be something super, super basic, back in the day where I was literally walking to deliver my first case of oat milk to the first ever shop that stopped me, and I suddenly panicked that the price I was going to charge them was wrong, and I calculated my margin wrong, and how do you even calculate a margin? And so I literally was standing around the corner calling a friend who has her own brewery and saying, remind me, am I doing this right? Have I done this right? And so I think there's always somebody who can help you, and I think that's really just so important, is to try and build up your network from the beginning, ask questions. Even people who are really successful and have amazing businesses are so willing to help often, and I think it's that feeling of like imposter syndrome. I suffer from that even now, and I think just make friends, get out there, take advice wherever you can get it, and ask for help, and suddenly those big challenges don't seem so daunting. So yeah, that would be my advice.
Brilliant. And just picking up your earlier point about Scottish Edge, which is a fantastic organisation, opportunity, the competitive nature of it, and by golly, it is competitive. And I previously have sat on the advisory board for Scottish Edge. I think it's a brilliant initiative. But as you've had, I think you said there, you've had 4 goes at it and finally you kind of got it through. And it's Sir Tom Hunter who, I mean, the funding for this comes from the Hunter Foundation, it comes from the Scottish Government, so it's a brilliant private kind of public partnership. But as Sir Tom Hunter says a lot, if you're not successful, it's not a no, it's a not yet, which I think is really, good advice. Kate, what about yourself in terms of overcoming that fear?
Yeah, well, so my co-founder, Daisy, is still in her 20s. And when we were setting this up, we discussed a lot about the attitude to risk. And I think that running your own business is all about uncertainty. You have to make plans on uncertainty in a way. So you're as well getting on top of that. You're as well getting on top of the uncertainty and making it a thing. So Daisy and I discuss our future plans and so on. And we understand that things do have an element of risk. But that initial decision to cross the threshold and to set up your business is probably the most angst-ridden. And I think a couple of rules: don't gamble with anything that you can't afford to lose. Okay, so if that's nothing, it's nothing. Start with nothing. We started with nothing. We're entirely bootstrapped. on purpose. And as Karen said, it's your job to leverage everything and everybody in your immediate environment, and you can do it that way. So start small, put your toe in the water, see if you like it. And as Douglas said, it's about the right attitude to risk. But most of all, because of the uncertainty, as you grow, then things are magnified. And just don't look down. Don't be a fool, but don't look down. Don't look at the worst case scenario all the time, because you'll miss the best case scenario too.
Brilliant. Excellent answers. Thank you for that advice. Hopefully that was helpful. And your point there about growing kind of brings us on to our next question. How has your business changed or grown since it started? And Kate, I'll come to you first on that one.
Sure. Well, we didn't, so we wanted to grow, but we didn't know that growth was actually, you've got to have a growth strategy if that's what you want to do. So we got really good advice from Business Gateway about this. And we joined other accelerators, which I'd like to also highlight. And we decided to, the way we're changing is that we've got growth plans. So we're going global. We want to do high volume growth deliberately, because that's a way to establish your market position and keep your competitive advantage. Because we're in the tech sector, things, as you can imagine, are very fast changing. So for anybody listening, I think growth is something that you should factor in. And of course it's uncertain. Everything's uncertain. There's risk in ordinary life, but think about growth as a thing. And although you are an entrepreneur and leveraging everything, don't just be short term about it. So our business, so we're hoping to roll out to Europe next year in 2025. We're speaking to potential partners in America and so on. So just think big. I'm really proud of Scotland, and we can think big. We've got a track record for exporting some of the best ideas and engines and inventions and so on, and we can keep that going, I think. So we've changed because we're thinking about 3-year, 5-year plans.
Brilliant. Karen, what about yourself?
Yeah, I think that's a really important point, that think big. So I definitely echo that, kind of like have your North Star of, where you want to be, and it should be big. It should be thinking outside the box. We want to be the go-to plant milk brand for families. So you've got to break that down into small chunks. And so for me, the business started literally in my kitchen. I thought I was going to make the product myself, so I gave it to friends, neighbors, but it quickly became clear that if I did really want to achieve this goal, I was going to have to look, how am I going to commercially scale this business? And it won't be from me making it in my kitchen. So then taking advice from places, Business Gateway, the RBS Accelerator, other programs, understanding how you take a concept and then you actually have to make the product, so finding a manufacturer, all that scaling. But it still was just me in the beginning. I've only now got 1 employee, so we're still a very small team, but we've gone from 1 product at launch and now we've got 4 products on the market. We're in more than 100 stores, so that distribution is building outside of Scotland as well. But it's definitely like it's step by step, but it's always holding on to that. Where do you want to get to, and working back at the smaller steps that can take you on that path, because it does become very overwhelming. Modeling growth can be really hard because you are factoring in all these assumptions, and it can be challenging and demoralizing. So just bite-sized chunks and then growing, but keeping the ultimate goal in mind is how I'm doing it anyway.
Grand. I'm going to pick up another question from our audience, and I'm going to come to you, Douglas, on this one, because you were talking earlier of you're a director on a number of different organisations, and the question we've got is, how do you prioritise all the different things you need to do, for example, marketing, bookkeeping, etc., as they are all so important? Now, from your perspective, as a director across a number of organisations, that's probably even more of a challenge to prioritise. So I'm going to throw you to the lions here and say, okay, how do you do that?
That is a very, very good question, and I really wish I had a fantastic answer to it. I've been to seminars where they've talked about prioritising things and colour coordinating things and all of that, just based on the principle of what do you do when you come into the office in the morning. I would say, to be quite blunt about it, when you're in a small business, you can have a schedule, you can have all of those things, but they will be out the window by about 6:30 in the morning. When you open your emails, there'll be stuff there that has to be dealt with right now, and particularly if it involves phoning a call center, you're probably going to be sitting there for the next hour at the very least, trying to sort things out. If there's a problem with the bank, that's what you're doing for the next few hours, regardless of what you planned. I think it would be lovely to be structured, and we keep talking within our businesses about how to structure these things. And Leslie, who works with me with the Highland Food and Drink Trail, her job is to be organised, and she is absolutely fabulous at it, and I'm very, very jealous. I am more reactive, but I sort of, right now, I have to be reactive. With most food and drink things right now, it's a struggle. My honest answer is there are things that are quite clearly priorities that morning, and you deal with those priorities, and you fit the rest in whenever you can, or wait until they become priorities. That's the sad truth, and I'd love to say that there was anything more to it, but for the last 10 years, basically, I think it's been reacting every morning to what needs to be done that day. Yes, you become an expert in everything. Yeah. But to go with, there's one of the things that everyone's been saying is about talking to other people, because you can't be an expert in everything. And when you go to these networking events or award ceremonies and things like that, you're sitting next to people who have been through it. They've done it. They may look to you like these massive organizations are incredibly successful, but after half an hour of talking over a glass of wine, you find out that that is not the case, that they have their struggles, they have their problems, and actually your problems are relatively small and easily solved relative to theirs. So there's a confidence in talking to other people, but get good people around you, delegate as much as you can. We've got a fantastic company of accountants who take so much off my plate and give me so much really good advice. That helps a lot. So as the owner, you're always going to be reactive, and you're always going to be dealing with that priority. But what I would say is surround yourself with people who you get on with, who help you, who can advise you, and can take a load off you when necessary.
Brilliant. Kate or Karen, anything you want to add to that? Kate?
Yep. I echo that. I absolutely agree with that, Douglas. So I think develop a roadmap, set goals, have a strategy that you can stick to, and then you get your priorities. You are reactive, but you can also tick away. Very often a Friday afternoon when everybody else has gone home, you're ticking away at your priorities. If that's not you, if you don't recognise yourself from that description, please upskill in time management, upskill in all these things that maybe in your previous versions of your lives you've not had to know about. And if you upskill, then you just learn how to do it, and then you can become, you won't be an expert in things, but you can become really well organised, know about goal setting, know about accountability to yourself, to your team. You can develop resilience. All these training courses really help because nobody's good at everything. So,
Karen?
Yeah, I think it's the same. I mean, sometimes it does feel like lurching from one fire to another. The days, there's always something, and every problem you solve, there's going to be then, other issues that come up. So I think it's that thing that, you'll hear a lot if you do, sit in on any kind of training or mentoring. It's that idea of working in the business or on the business. And that difference with being consumed with the daily task of keeping things going, keeping money coming in, or whatever your business model is, but versus being able to take that step back and make time in amongst that chaos of firefighting and everything's a priority, to actually really step back and think, okay, back to that goal, back to that long-term strategy, and what are the things that will move the needle the most, and then trying to find the time for that. So I think it's finding a way, and whether that's an accountability group of peers or through a mentoring program or something, but somebody who is with you and can really hold you to account. Because if you are a founder and I'm a sole founder, you're alone. And if you don't do the things, you're going to beat yourself up about it. But at the end of the day, there's not somebody else necessarily saying, why is this not on my desk today? So I think building in some kind of an accountability for yourself is important.
You touched on mentors there, Karen. Have you had a mentor? We've had a question asking if any of the panelists had mentors in the process, And if you did, how has it helped? Have you had a mentor?
Yeah, I've been definitely very lucky. I've had a few. So I did the RBS Accelerator scheme. In fact, it's in the office in the Edinburgh hub now. I'm the alumni program now. So through that, I had mentoring from one of the team who's based in Glasgow there, and in the early stage of my business, and that was really, really helpful. And you know, he continues to kind of take an interest in the business. And then I have also found myself a consultant who is like a business strategy consultant, but expert in food and drink. But she provides me with so much more than the strategic advice I pay for. And she's been just so valuable in being that kind of cheerleader on the sidelines, keeping me straight with what I'm prioritizing, what I'm working on, giving me that encouragement I need at the same time as like laser focused on commercials and marketing strategy, everything else that I need to be doing. So like that ideal mix. And then I've got a nice little group of peers that in food and drink, other female founders, and we kind of all support each other. So that's like a different kind of mentoring, but I think it's equally important to have that peer support and mentoring as it is to have that sort of seniority, somebody who's been there, done that, and can really give you all the advice. So I've definitely sought that out, and I would recommend to everyone to do that, because everybody needs advice from somewhere.
Brilliant. Kate, have you had a mentor?
Yeah, absolutely. So I had a mentor through Business Gateway. So it was the Expert Help Scheme, which gave funded hours of a mentor, and worked with a couple of mentors. And the mentor was so good that we've now hired him, and I meet with him every fortnight. And it's just really good, because knowing that I'm meeting them makes me really focus on what's going well, what's not going well, what do I need to move on, you know, planning, all that kind of stuff. So it also comes back to the person that asked that question about being kind of a bit hesitant, a bit fearful to start. Please be reassured that the support you get is incredible. We've had mentors from the Barclays Ego Lab as well, so mentors in London. We're part of the Edinburgh University AI Accelerator, and we get coaching in London by Eviden. It's quite incredible, and in fact I think it takes a village to raise a business, and that village is the mentors that we have and we've had, and everyone's made a massive contribution. Sometimes they just say no, don't do that, which I think is helpful as well. So but yeah, absolutely, totally supportive and helpful, and they've got the experience, because you can't know everything. And I think that's part of the thing, being a founder. Don't think you've got to start up, you've got to know everything. Just start small and have an idea. Think about your customer, obsess with customer, what's in their heart and mind. And then the mentors will help you, will guide you.
Brilliant. Thanks, Kate. Douglas, what about yourself?
To be honest, we've never had a sort of formal mentors for ourselves. We've had some very useful people within Business Gateway and various other organisations who have been invaluable. But ironically, we're now on the other side of the table now, that the Highland Food and Drink Trail, which started off, well, version 2 of the Food and Drink Trail, was this idea of street food in Inverness. And what's happened is that all those early stage new food and drink businesses that started up with us got sales, got the market out there, got customers and things, and they've all moved on into sort of fixed properties or have developed in other ways. So we've now got our second stage of very early stage businesses coming up, and they're using street food as a way of developing from basically from the kitchen towards fixed premises. So it feels slightly ironic to me, but we're now in a position where we are now the mentors. We are helping them. We are discussing their problems, putting them in touch with people, getting them all to talk to each other, telling them, you know, this is the guy you want to phone. This is what you're phoning about. Here's his number. You know, this is what you're asking for. We'll help you with the forms. So there's all that sort of stuff from food and drink, but also Jenny with Bad Girl Bakery. One of her side quests is the Highland Cake Collab, which is a collaborative collection of all the early stage bakers all across the Highlands, sharing experiences, sharing equipment, sharing people, and we sort of run courses for them in imposter syndrome and setting up and working with the environmental health people to talk all of that. And yeah, it's our way of sort of giving back, if you like. we've been through it all. We want to be the person you're sitting next to at that networking thing that reassures you that it's okay and actually gives you contacts and gives you the belief to get through whatever it is you're going through. So it's a very strange turnaround for me to be taking advice and then giving advice to these new starts, but it seems to be working. And yeah, generally speaking, mentorship comes down to talk to people.
Yeah.
Talk to people. They're all going through the same thing. Talk to them.
Brilliant. Brilliant. Thanks, Douglas. We were kind of touching earlier on the journey that you guys have been on. I'd like to kind of explore a wee bit more about some of the biggest challenges that you faced early on and how you overcame those. Karen, can I start with you?
Sure. I think for me, I mean, funding is always a challenge, but that aside, manufacturing. So knowing that I wanted to make a product that was commercially scalable. So in the world of oat milk, really that means having a shelf-stable product that can easily be shipped around. So when I started, there was only one manufacturer in the whole of the UK that could actually make and pack oat milk. And so me as a new business with no track record in the industry coming in and saying, I want to work with you, will you make this product for me, was really, really challenging. It almost didn't happen. So I invested a huge amount of effort in the sort of year prior to launch in making that relationship work, got on board. We're the only small business they launched that year. But then at the start of this year, they've been bought out, and unfortunately, that relationship wasn't possible to continue, so then left with finding a new manufacturer. Since then, there is now somebody else who makes it in the UK, so had to go back to the beginning, start all over again. But with customers and needing a constant supply of product and having lots of plans in the pipeline for new products and all sorts, so super destabilizing. When I want to be focusing on sales and growth, I now had to be focusing on my supply chain and my new manufacturing relationship. And so that has taken a long time to work on. It's taken attention and effort and money. But the exciting thing is that we're relaunching in January a new and improved products. We've got lots of new boxes that we're ticking, really, really exciting. And that wouldn't have happened had we not been forced out and into a new manufacturer. But I know that going forward, that is just going to continue to be the most important relationship in my business, is the relationship I have with my co-packers. I've got two for another different one in Scotland for my smoothies. And it's really difficult when you're a small business. You've got you're negotiating from a weak position. You need them, they don't need you. They're packing products for supermarkets, for Nestle, for whoever, and you're like, oh, can you do it for me too? So that's been really, really tough, huge learning curve around contract negotiation and understanding just how factories work, supply chains of ingredients, all these things. So for me, that has just been really, really challenging. But I feel like we're now in a stronger place than we were a year ago, so it's been worth it. But yeah, it's a big challenge. Yeah.
And that touches back on what we were talking about earlier, priorities. You fight the fires you can see and that you need to deal with. Yeah, absolutely. Kate?
Yeah, bootstrapping. So the biggest challenge we've had is bootstrapping. So for those not the term, it just means that you run your business without any investment or grants or whatever. So it's just pulling yourself up by your bootstraps, which technically, physically you can't do, so it's kind of a joke. But bootstrapping, because we chose that because we wanted to develop our resilience. We also wanted to be independent and a bit scrappy and everything else. And that was the biggest challenge. It's over now because we've got some grant funding. But that was the biggest challenge, because for Daisy and I, it meant, personal sacrifice. And I think that's the thing about business, about going into it with your eyes open. It will involve personal sacrifice. And I think that was the most challenge. But then challenges are also good things. And I'm really proud of us for doing that. I think because we've got, there's two founders, and then I think you've got each other to talk to. I think being a solopreneur and bootstrapping, I think it's particularly tough because you don't have someone else to talk to. So we've developed some in jokes and we've dealt with it in a humorous way. But anybody out there with a business, you're thinking about bootstrapping, don't be put off by what I said, because you do get through it. you know, but it comes back to goal setting and plans. So.
Brilliant. Thanks, Kate. Douglas, challenges early on?
I mean, we both, all the businesses have had very, very changeable gestations. Bad Girl Bakery started off as a kitchen business, then a little bit of wholesale, a little bit of retail. Then we got a contract from Caledonian Sleeper and started gearing up towards a wholesale operation. The premises we got had a cafe attached, so suddenly we were a cafe. Then we were a huge wholesale operation, and we had a business plan, a proper business plan looking forward, which we completed just at the end of 2019. And my general opinion about business plans is I would love a business plan to last longer than 12 months. So certainly the period after COVID, we were a delicatessen, we were a takeaway, we were a wholesale baker, we were a retail baker, we were all sorts of things. Not, you know, that's kind of continued to be the case. And the food and drink trail, you know, likewise, it started off as a collaboration between all the top independent restaurants in Inverness, plus a street food area, is a way of responding to COVID and getting people back into hospitality, and also look at how to develop businesses to move back into the centre of town. Now, that as we came out of COVID, the restaurants that were there had limited seating, and you genuinely could not get a seat in the restaurant without a 3-month waiting list. So the idea of marketing them was kind of pointless because they were so oversubscribed. And also, to be honest, the press were only interested in, and people were mostly interested in the street food side. So we sort of concentrated and became a street food provider, if you like. And of course, as I've mentioned already, since then we've become, well, actually, that's less of an issue. What's more of an issue now is we're actually developing food and drink businesses, and we're now moving into business development. Now, things, you know, it's great that we're flexible, that we've managed to alter our businesses constantly according to circumstances. But in terms of the conversation we had about prioritizing things, that's great if you know what your growth is and if you're following a relatively straight path and you can see where you're going and things. But certainly in the first couple of years of Bad Girl Bakery, it was changing weekly. You'd think, right, okay, we've got a plan, we can do this, and then you'd have the head of food and drink of National Trust of Scotland coming in going, your cakes are fabulous, could you supply all of our visitor centres? You're like, okay, yeah, we're just going to say yes and work out. And you know, that you know, there's never anyone, when you're growing at that scale, the money coming in is not the money you need. We started off with the very strong belief that we weren't going to borrow money for this business. That lasted about 6 months. We're not horrendously in debt, but you know, that's part of it because we're growing, and that's the way it has to be. So, you know, it's not a specific thing. It's that thing of spending years with a moving goalposts, trying to keep up on things. There's no money in the pot. You're having to make these decisions about how do you grow this business without those funds. And it's a challenge. Sometimes it's really enjoyable.
I noticed the use of the word sometimes there. Yeah. All of you have independently talked about the value of the importance of networking. Do you mean a formal network? And if you do, what is the formal network that you subscribe to, you use, and perhaps there's more than one? Or are you meaning, perhaps as well, you are also meaning the informal networks, the friends, the folk you meet, the folk you get together with? What does networking mean for each of you? Kate, I'm going to come to you first on that one.
Sure. Well, I'm a huge fan of LinkedIn. So I built up just a small following, but an important following over the last year. So LinkedIn is incredibly important because it's about building your brand, you know, especially as a startup. You're building your brand, you're trying to communicate your brand values, all these things. And that's lovely, and I think that's very important, and I use LinkedIn so much. I think the personal networks are very important as well. You can sit, one of the magic things about all of this, you can sit down beside somebody in one of the incubators or the support kind of programs that are around, and you can make an instant business friend. And that's what happened to me, you know, and now we miss each other all the time, and, you know, it's in a completely different business. But you can have a network that you can, you know, so I'm on WhatsApp groups from last year, people I met, and we say things like, you know, about applying to register for VAT and advice, and you've got a contract for this, you know, what does this mean? Because we're going for investment, I asked a question, how do you set up a vault for all your investors? And they said, oh, it's just a Dropbox. I thought, okay, so it's tips and help, support. I think it's incredibly important. And you know that you've got a go-to people that you can ask. You know, the RBS as well, Karen, I think was really useful as well. So.
Brilliant. Douglas, what about yourself? Formal networks, informal, both?
I mean, I suppose traditionally I would have said I was one of these people who doesn't do networking, you know, horrible things. But actually, that's not the case. Maybe not formal networking, but you know, particularly in the Highlands, there are a lot of events where it's the food and drink industry is relatively small, so everyone tends to end up in the same places. You make these connections. But what we say to our sort of our peers and things is, you don't have competitors, your competitors are not who you think they are. And it's something with the trail, with Bad Girl and things. It's actually all those other food and drink businesses around you. They're not competing with you. They're in the same position as you. They're dealing with the same thing. And actually, you'll find if you sit down and with them, they'll have got through this. They'll have got through that. So there's this. It can be formal. It can be informal. But you know, the industry is actually very small. Scotland is very small. One of the great things about LinkedIn is you realise how small it is. This person knows that person. This person knows that person. But I would absolutely say over and over again to people, you don't have competitors. Stop thinking like that. That gets you defensive. That gets you worried about things. When we opened Bad Girl, about 3 months after we opened Bad Girl, the next village announced that they were opening an artisan bakery within a slightly Italian theme, and we thought, oh my God, that's it. We've lasted 3 months. That's it. We're gone. And of course, the weekend they opened, our sales went up because people were coming to the area and shopping and things. And then we realized, actually, we're just being daft. Stop panicking. Stop catastrophizing this. And it was the beginning of that sort of relationship that turned into Jenny's Highland Cake collab. Is this idea that all these nascent bakeries all needed each other's support. The more people buying cake, the better. The more people, you know, the better the quality of the cake, the more availability of cake, more people would be into it. And it was one of the first successes of it, was getting people to understand that sitting in a room with all these other bakers was not a competition, quite the opposite. So I'm still a little bit wary of official networking events, I'll be honest. But actually, I'm also aware that every award ceremony, every thing that's going on in town is an opportunity to catch up with people and hear their stories and realize that your stories are not so very different.
Yeah, and learn. Every day is a learning opportunity. Yeah.
Always a school day.
Always a school day. Every day. Karen.
Yeah, I think it is. It's a mix of both. I mean, I agree. LinkedIn, I think, is wonderful. It seems very active and busy now. I think there's like a real focus on, particularly in the business community, of people, doing that personal brand building and making contacts. It can become overwhelming, and I think maybe this is the one thing I would say about networking is I'm somebody who jumps in, joins things, really tries to make those connections, speak to lots of people. And so I've got lots and lots of informal WhatsApp groups of founders in different industries, different regions, all other kinds. And then there's also Scotland Food and Drink, for example, so there's formal ones, and it can become a bit overwhelming. And suddenly there's almost like too much going on and too many people. So I think it's also about finding the network that works for you and the kind of support that you are looking for. Like, is it that you want to network for the purpose of growing your business, growing sales, then maybe look to the more formal industry-specific network groups. If it is more about you're the kind of person that just wants that personal cheerleading and support, and maybe you are in that early stage of, you know, anxiety about starting a business, then maybe look to more peer networking and groups of friends and other people in your community. So I think it is about just finding the ones that work for you and the medium that works for you. Is it in person? Do you like engaging on LinkedIn? There's lots of ways to build that community around you. And so, yeah, just put some time into it and then see how it works the best for you.
Brilliant. Thanks, Karen. You've all mentioned in different forms support from the business support ecosystem, be it Scottish Edge or RBS accelerators or incubators or Business Gateway or Scottish Enterprise, whoever. What support do you think would make the biggest difference for small businesses? So I'm going to come to Douglas first on that one.
Okay.
Douglas is now delighted with me doing that, but I'm going to come to him first.
I'm good. I promised I wouldn't have any rants. I'm
Incoming.
trying not to rant, but I think every small business needs funding of some sort, and I think there's a very wide range of different funding options available. What I do find is that there is a very risk-averse funding thing going on. The high street is full of lenders. There's some very hugely automated lending systems, lots of off-the-shelf stuff, which is absolutely fine if you're in the center of that distribution curve. If you're in the center of that bell curve, you're absolutely fine. There's off-the-shelf things that will absolutely tick your boxes. I think a lot of people who start their own businesses are starting their own businesses because they want to do something different than the way it's done beforehand. They are almost by definition innovative businesses, which by definition will do things differently. And I think this is where the big problem is that center of the bell curve has got all sorts of very straightforward, very easy options, and there's all these funding mechanisms for new businesses that's trying to do the same thing, but with your local authority backing and a certain amount of hoops that you have to jump through that the private sector don't have to jump through. So my own personal bugbear is when you're talking to a fund that is ostensibly for business development, that's got regional and economic criteria, but its lending criteria are just as tough or tougher than the private sector stuff that's there for the mainstreams. And funds that don't recognize that you are doing something different because that's what you're doing. You don't want to do it the same as someone else. You want to do it different. So I have a certain terror of drop-down menus. You know, which of these best describes your business? Well, if any of those has described my business, it would just be the same as someone else's. Yeah. And I've had the misfortune of being involved in many businesses that simply did not fit the drop-down menu. And I think there's a risk issue and a flexibility issue that is not being addressed within many of the funding organizations that are supposed to be there for innovative new businesses.
Brilliant. That's a really insightful answer.
That one, but that's how I feel.
Yeah, no, that's really helpful. Kate, what about yourself? What support do you think would make the biggest difference for small businesses?
Okay, so money is number one, because businesses need money, especially people who are taking the risks. And as a bootstrap business, certainly, you know, the porridge can get very thin. But number two, on a more profound basis, I think getting the founder's voice at the centre of this. And I made the same point last week to the Department of Business and Trade when they said, what do businesses need in Scotland? And I said, the founder's voice to be at the heart of everything. When I was an academic, I did this with universities and put the student's voice at the heart. And it made a huge difference. And it's just really that. I mean, I mean, everyone really cares what founders think and ask for and say, and I know that and I acknowledge that absolutely. But I think just a formal mechanism for having the founder's voice at the heart of everything, and then that will change things in kind of spiral out from that, and will create changes in its wake.
Again, another very insightful answer. Thank you for that. Karen.
Yeah, I mean, I can only echo definitely the funding, and then I think, yeah, keeping small business interests, looking through that lens when thinking about government policies, regulations, things like that, how it's going to affect small businesses, because we employ a lot of people. We're driving a lot of the economy on us, so it's really important that we're supported. And then I think also there's something around making that leap from being a very small new startup business to having scaling aspirations and larger growth aspirations, and like support, whether that is funding, whether it's connections, whether it's training and export. Those, Scotland is a small market, so once you've built up your business in Scotland and you want to start looking to grow further, I think sometimes there's not enough support for that stage of that sort of scaling business, and maybe that's an area to look at.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you for that. I am very conscious of time. We've got about 4 minutes left, so very, very quickly, what I am going to touch on now, because you mentioned this, Kate, what advice would you give other small businesses on gaining loyal customers? Because at the end of the day, the customers are what's going to make the difference and make the business. So Kate, I'm going to start with you. So
Yeah,
very
sure.
briefly, how do you get them?
Briefly, I would take the disloyal customers as well, because you never know how loyal a customer is going to be. On a serious note, think very carefully about your customer. Okay, there's a brilliant book called Building a Story Brand by Donald Miller. Get it on audiobook or whatever. It's quite an old book, but it's great. And it just says, empathetically think about your customer. What pain points of theirs are you solving? And how does your product or products solve their problems?
Okay, brilliant. Karen.
Yeah, absolutely. That's, what I was going to say is, you've got to be solving a pain point for somebody. You've got to have that product market fit. You've got to really understand what is that person's experience and how are you helping them. Who are they? What are they interested in? Where are they spending their time? And you need to make sure you're there offering them this better solution to whatever the problem is that they're having. And you can only get that by really understanding who they are. And so, yes, having that laser focus on learning who your customer is. And then, of course, having a fantastic customer service and all the other bits and pieces that make them want to keep coming back again to your business. But know your customer, and hopefully they'll keep coming back to you.
Okay. And Douglas, to yourself as well, what advice would you give small businesses on gaining loyal customers?
Everyone's saying the same thing. You listen to your customers and things. Certainly within the food and drink industry, you are asking people who currently right now don't have a lot of cash, who are time strapped, everything like that. You're asking them to go out of their way to go and have a treat. Whatever your food product is, it's a treat. It's not an everyday thing. You're asking them to go out and spend their money and have a treat, and you absolutely have to make that worthwhile. And that's not just about the quality of the food, it's the whole experience. The treat is going out for that thing. So that might be a £2 scone, it might be a £15 burger, whatever it is, but it's absolutely got to be worth it to them. Otherwise, they won't come out again. You want to be their treat thing. You want to, even if it's once a month. If you've got 2,000 people going once a month, that's great. That'll do you. But yeah, I get frustrated where I see people who have focused on just the one part of that experience, because actually what people are buying into is the whole thing. And I would, whatever business you're in, I would say to everyone, go there as a customer. Just for yourself, whether that experience is worth it.
Brilliant. We are coming to the end of our time. I would really like to thank all three of our panellists. Some incredibly helpful advice and guidance and insights into the challenges, into the opportunities, into the kind of things that businesses need. So I hope we haven't, by any stretch of the imagination, managed to answer all the questions that I had or all the questions that we've received, but we will get answers back to folk who posed those questions, and there have been a broad range. We've covered a fair number of them in terms of networking and mentors and all sorts of things that we've touched on today. But a huge thank you to our panel for joining us today and giving their knowledge and expertise to us. A huge thank you to all of you who have attended. I hope you found that useful and valuable. As I said earlier, we've recorded it. It will be available later on. And I noticed that my colleague has put a link to a feedback opportunity to tell us what you kind of thought of the session today. And with that, I am going to say goodbye. Look after yourselves, look after your loved ones, and we will no doubt see you again on another webinar. Take care.